I have a question to ask this week. Can human beings change God's mind? Shalom, my friends. Yes, that is my question for the week. Can human beings cause God to change his mind? It's not an easy question.
It's going to take all of my thinking and all of my consecration.
We do have stories in which biblical figures argue with God, like Abraham in Genesis chapter 18, or Moses in Exodus 32. But in the passage being read in synagogues this week, the passage from the book of Numbers that tells of a rebellion led by a man named Korach against Moses and Aaron, we find an intriguing possibility. Perhaps there is a way to change the mind of God, and if that is indeed what the text is telling us, it is not through words alone, but also through actions. In the story of the rebellion, we read that the earth opened up and swallowed the rebel Korach and his followers. The remainder of the nation is furious with Moses and Aaron, accusing them of having engineered the deaths of Korach and his followers. This so angered God that he struck the nation with a deadly plague. Just before the plague was beginning, God said to Moses and Aaron, quote, "Lift yourselves up from this community so that I may annihilate them in an instant." But the very next thing that happens is just the opposite of what God said to do. Instead of lifting themselves up to separate themselves from the nation, Moses and Aaron fell on their faces and prostrated themselves before God. That's when Moses realized the plague was starting, and he ordered Aaron to take his sacred incense and stand between those who had already died and those who were still alive. And somehow, for some reason, the plague was stopped. I think that throwing themselves down is a metaphor of sorts for everything that happens after this. It's not just they were anguished and they fell on their faces because they couldn't think of anything else to do. It's not a coincidence that God said, "Lift yourselves up," but they went down. Yes, they were doing the opposite of what God said, and everything that happens after this is also the opposite of what God said. God started the plague, God was going to destroy them all, and human beings have the chutzpah, the unmitigated gall, to say, we're going to stop the plague. How could they stop a plague if God was behind it? There is, I think, only one way, and that is if God allowed for the possibility of the plague to be stopped, and I think he did. God didn't just say, there's going to be a plague and leave it at that. He said, lift yourselves up and there will be a plague, and perhaps that implies something. What if you don't lift yourselves up? What then? I think we're getting a recurrence of what happened in the Exodus story I mentioned earlier. God is furious with Israel over the building of the golden calf, and God says to Moses, "Leave me alone, so that my anger may blaze forth against them, and that I may destroy them, and make of you a great nation." But Moses didn't let God alone. He argued, "Let not your anger, O Lord, blaze forth against your people, whom you delivered from the land of Egypt." So interestingly, we have two stories of Moses, one including his brother Aaron, doing the opposite of what God said to do, with the result that God forgave Israel both times. Now let's be clear. Am I saying that the way to incur God's favor is by disobeying God?
No.
But I am saying that human life is of infinite value, and when we fight for life, especially on behalf of others, that seems to touch God's heart, even to the point of God reversing himself and supporting our efforts to preserve life. I hope you found this question worthy of thought, or at least interesting. If you did, please hit the like button on YouTube, the thumbs up. Help us get these videos in front of more viewers. And I want to welcome our newest subscribers. We now total 694. Only six more, and we will hit 700. So please consider becoming a subscriber if you have not already done so. All you have to do is be logged into YouTube when you watch the video, and then click on my face right over here. You can also watch our last video by clicking on its icon right over there. As ever, until next time, Shabbat Shalom.